Hey, what's up, guys? Time of the year again, and back for Game of Thrones review. Season 2's premiere tonight is underway on HBO, and after having watched it, I am here to give my recap/review on it. In case you don't want to be spoiled, go back and watch the episode, then come back here and check out this review and see if you agree with what I have to say or not. So without further ado, let's get down into this little shindig. And man, has a lot happened in this one. Now, I have to say that this isn't the greatest season premiere that I've seen to a show from HBO. Usually they do a lot of things to sort of have an attention-getter type of thing. And for the majority of the episode, I was looking for something shocking to happen, and it didn't really happen until the end of it. So, yeah, I'm going to spoil a lot of stuff here, but got a lot of ground to cover on this one. We're starting to expand our status quo of other characters in Westeros into the TV show now. Let's start off with something that needs to be addressed, though, the particular elephant in the room of this episode. Joffrey Baratheon, the little pompous Antichrist king who now rules over the Seven Realms, and has a few upstarts trying to vie the position of the Iron Throne away from him with the claim that he is the product of his mother and uncle's incest. So, while incest does seem to be a prominent theme throughout this episode, we got Joffrey starting out celebrating his name day as the new king, and he's having a sort of small to the death tourney taking place. And we just are treated to how much of a monster, even further, that this kid is. He's just a complete and utter bastard, in this case figuratively, to Sansa Stark, and reminds her quite often that she is betrothed to him, and that she will do pretty much whatever he wants, otherwise problems will be had. It is on behalf of Sansa that a certain man's life is spared after he showed up to the tourney a little bit late, and you know what, he's kind of snocked a little bit, but Joffrey, pretending to be understanding, says, hey, it's my name day, I totally understand, come over and have a little wine. And he proceeds to give the guy almost a little too much wine, enough for it to almost kill him by choking on it. But Sansa quickly intervenes, and when Joffrey starts to get upset about that, he sits there and considers it, and hey, guess what? Now he's got him a new fool. Meanwhile, all this is taking place. We have some stuff unfolding with our members of the Night's Watch, particularly Jon Snow and Samwell Tarly, who are following the Old Bear and a few other guys up into the north to investigate exactly where the whites that attacked them came from. And investigating the rumors, in fact, that a Mance Rayder is crowning himself the king beyond the wall and is amassing an army. So the Night's Watch are off after this former traitor, and it's going to be a while before they get there, but they stop off to spend the night at a place owned by a very nasty fellow named Craster. Craster is also figuratively and literally a nasty fellow in the fact that he has many daughter wives there keeping him company. And this kind of establishes a problem which is coming up with Jon Snow too, when he sort of speaks out of turn and the Old Bear gets pissed off at him. He kind of speaks on the fact that, actually he gets on to Jon's case quite a lot because Craster also is particularly biased against a bastard. He's biased against any of the men looking at his daughters, but more in fact a bastard who seems to be more loathed than products of incest. And Jon starts to get upset, but then the Old Bear corners him outside and said, hey, I made you my steward for a reason. You want to learn how to lead, you're going to learn how to follow. And that's the biggest quality of a leader, and I think that's pretty cool that they brought that up. Jon does seem to be a leader in the making for this, and I buy the portrayal of the guy playing him, and doing a good job in covering this aspect. Meanwhile, we've got other kings are starting to break off besides Robb Stark, who is still mourning the death of his father, but establishing a massive counterattack against Tywin's forces that have come after him. They did manage to capture the Kingslayer, and there's a really interesting moment that takes place in this series in between Jaime and Robb. That's one of the things that I've liked about the series, and it seems, if this episode is any indication for the rest of the season, that we might start getting other points of view that were not in the books. This is stuff that will still be relevant to the story, but we're going to be doing it with different people. So it's fun seeing moments that are not in the books unfold with other characters. And we're starting to establish a little more strongly the allegations against Queen Cersei that her children were not had with Robert. And this is pretty cool. There's a really suspenseful moment where Jaime thinks that he might be in trouble because we see the big bad direwolf walk up with Robb into Jaime's cage and pretty much just establishing, hey, I'm in charge here, and, you know, you're pretty much my bitch right now. Meanwhile, we've got Tyrion back into the kingdom. He's come back from the field of battle, being appointed by Tywin in his absence as the Hand of the King, and Cersei is none too happy about his being there. It's good to see Peter Dinklage back in this role. He really sold me as playing that character in the first season, and he further establishes that he's sharp of wit, and he's also seems to be having a little bit of an agenda that he's going to be laying out. He is an indication that he is the only one of the Lannisters who seems to actually have a modicum of decency to him. Hell, in fact, he's got a lot of decency to him. You see that when he comforts Sansa Stark at the start, where he expresses his sympathies for the loss of her father, which I thought that was pretty cool of him. And further establishes a little more that he can handle business when he wants to. All jokes aside, he pretty much gets up in Cersei's face and says, hey, I'm here to clean up the mess that you managed to let happen by doing nothing. And it's going to be interesting to see what exactly that he plays out in this season with his new role as temporary Hand of the King. Meanwhile, we drop in on Daenerys Targaryen, and her little band of followers are wandering through the red wastes away from the Dothraki lands. It was kind of a matter of complaint of mine from the second book that Daenerys' chapters were particularly dry and not very exciting. But this is kind of the case for her right now. They seem to be just kind of at a lulling point right now. This is filler material for that character and about where she's going to go from here. They're trying to figure out where to go, and she's figuring out, you know, okay, I've got these dragons now, what do I do with them? And she's got Jorah Mormont there at her side trying to offer her some sage advice and, you know, just be the best pillar of strength that he can. And Daenerys is unsure of herself, but I guess they're trying to play off that she does have some idea where she wants to go from there, so she's trying to figure out how to get out of the little situation that they're in and hopefully make a better trek on back to the mainland of Westeros. Meanwhile, speaking of moments that don't make it into the books, what I talked about with the Robb and Jaime scene, we have a confrontation take place in between Cersei and Littlefinger, and I thought this was really good. Littlefinger was kind of played up as being a guy who always seems to have an ace up his sleeve, but sometimes his pride can get the better of him. Case in point, he goes on, like many other people, to stupidly confront Cersei about the allegations, and they're kind of sit there and playing mental chess with each other, much in the way that Peter and Varys were playing mental chess with each other in the first season. And he kind of establishes, you know, I know the dirty little secret. I don't think it's true. I know that it's true. And he sits there and says, you know, I've always learned one very simple truth out of life, which is that knowledge is power. And he just kind of starts rubbing Cersei's face in that. Well, Cersei still manages to outsmart some people, especially when she has her guards jump him and almost kill him. They have that little discussion about power, and while Peter establishes that, you know, knowledge is power. Bitch plays one on him and says, knowledge may be power, but power is still power. Don't forget who wields it. And I thought that was really cool. Moments like that weren't really in the books, hell, weren't even mentioned. But it's still pretty cool, and I do appreciate these twists of unpredictability that the show manages to do. I also really like the moment that unfolds in between Cersei and Joffrey getting on the tail end of this episode. There's a point to where Joffrey even goes to confront his mother about these allegations. And Joffrey is going to wind up being his own undoing, I think, with his attitude. I think his mother really is starting to realize that he's a problem. And the fact is that he's sitting there and he's just goading her about a lot of the trysts that Robb had outside of the marriage and about all of the bastards that he fathered. And she gets so pissed at him, she just hauls off and slaps the shit out of him. And everybody gets quiet when they're rearranging the throne room, just sit there and looking at them. And basically he turns to her and says, he doesn't exactly say it in these words, but if you ever do that again, your act of treason is punishable by death. And, Cersei in the books was blind to this. She still continued to dote on her son, even though that he acted like the sociopathic little monster that he is. But she kind of got the message across. While she had her little victory with Peter Baelish, her son goes on to remind her that even though he's her child, he is still her king, and he can pretty much have the power to do anything that he wants to with her. So that's kind of cool. And meanwhile, while we're taking all this on, Joffrey has gone into consideration and taking a lot of the problems of Ned Stark's bastards all around the kingdom. And he sort of pulls a King Herod, and if not him, I'm assuming the Lord Commander, I think Slint was his name, to where they're going around and they're killing off all the suspected bastards of Robert Baratheon, who are planning to make claims for the Iron Throne. While they may speculate that bastards may not be legitimate claims to the throne, the fact is that this could seriously pose a problem to them. And so we're going out on a lot of infanticide, and we're particularly paying attention for one bastard in particular who seems to be hanging around Arya. Meanwhile, she wasn't really touched much in this episode, but we're showing that she's still around, and we're going to kind of go somewhere with it. And I feel like there's something else that I'm missing from this, too. Oh, yeah. The fact is that not only do we have Daenerys, who plans on making a claim back to her old ancestor's throne, and we have the Starks establishing the fact that Robb is succeeding from the One Realm, and he is establishing Winterfell and pretty much most of the north that he rules over as its own independent kingdom. Stannis Baratheon is brought into this episode, and we get introduced to him, we get introduced to Melisandre, the Red Prophetess, and Davos, who might explain later on in the episode why he's called the Onion Knight. There is a particular minister, I'm assuming he's the hand to the king, I can't remember his name from the book, who doesn't like Melisandre's presence, and the fact that they're embracing this new god, he thinks that she's leading some kind of a cult. And he goes to resolve getting himself out of a particular situation, but she shows that there's more to her than meets the eye. And this is pretty good stuff. All in all, this is still a pretty solid episode. The series continues to be good. I'm going to admit, it was a good episode, but it's not a great episode for a season premiere. They usually do a little bit more to have attention getters, but I think a little bit of what they do when they go after Robert's kids in this particular episode is pretty gruesome, and that's enough of a shock value and attention getter for a first episode, I suppose, in their eyes. But it's still pretty good, and I'm still going to continue with it for the season, so if you want to check out some more, stick around with me in the weeks to come, and I will keep prominent on these Game of Thrones episode reviews. So until next time, have a good one.